It's time to mind your business with me, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in to find out how to mind your business with BEDC, special guest entrepreneurs, industry experts, and more. Brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda business starts here. Hey, welcome to Mind Your Business. I am so pleased to have you on the show. You are Perri Furbert, founder of Gold the Label.
Thank you for having me.
No, happy to have you here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. But before we do that, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, okay. I was born and raised in Bermuda. Always had an inclination for creativity, mainly editing clothing, much to my parents' dismay when I was younger. And always creatively inclined, always quite bold with the things that I wanted to do. Never really shied away from taking leadership spaces. So those kinds of characteristics have always been kind of around. What else about me? Apart from being a business, it's funny because when you're a business owner, it takes so much of your identity. But I am a creative through and through. I don't necessarily like to be boxed into one thing or another because, as my track record has shown, as well as just presently, I do so many things.
Okay.
So I am also an internationally published wardrobe stylist.
Oh, nice.
Yes. And I have also done some creative direction for other companies. So a whole array of creativity. I think that's the best way to describe me.
Okay. All right. So with regard to founding Gold the Label, did you always know that you were going to have your own business, create your own brand?
No.
No. Okay.
No, not at all. So again, with the self-expression through clothing, I was doing that when I was in college, much like how I always did. I was finding odds and ends and just recreating things into things. And of course, when you are on a budget as a student in college, you don't really have too much to play around with. So I was in Toronto and I discovered their thrifting world in Chinatown, and all of that was just like a playground for me. So it became somewhat of a challenge to create exciting shoes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's actually how Gold the Label was birthed. I was recreating shoes just for myself to wear out to parties or whatever, to stay fly on a dime. And I decided to create a Facebook album back when we were still doing that, of all of the creations. And the business was started that day.
Oh,
so
wow.
April 13th, 2010, people started to ask for orders and customization. So I kind of fell into it, and I learned very early that I did not know what I was doing. And that, when you're customizing and you're new at this, you don't really know what to charge.
Yeah.
And to answer your question in a very long way, I had no idea that was something that I wanted to do, but I fell into it just given how I am naturally. So yeah.
It's interesting because I think sometimes the best businesses are those that are organic and that people just respond to. So it's obvious that whatever you were doing, people were interested in it. So talk to me about, when did it transfer for something you enjoyed doing, right? You created your Facebook portfolio, if you will, until something that you were like, you know what? I could actually do this and make a living full time doing this. When did that transition happen?
I don't think there was ever I don't think that there's a definitive date.
Okay.
For me, once people requested orders, I think that's probably the day where I was like, we can do this.
Okay.
And again, I was in school, and I actually came home later that year, and then I ended up finishing my studies at a later date. So it just worked out that I then had more time. And then I was going through a bit of a transition, spiritually. So much was happening with me then that it kind of just made sense. And I feel like that ordainedness that we have with our lives, it was going to just happen anyway. And when I reflect back on it, I can see how it had to go that way in order for the business to, I'm trying not to make it too deep, but I'm a deep person.
No,
so
I
feel like in hindsight, it had to go that way.
Right.
And it just makes perfect sense that that's the way it went. But there wasn't a definitive date where I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this full time. But what I can say is I always knew that I did not want to work for other people.
Got you.
I enjoyed the lessons in gleaning from people, because I believe you should forever be a student, because it's so many things we just don't know and other people do better than you that you can learn from. But I know that I don't want to stay there too long.
Right.
Because I'm too much of a creator. I'm too much of an innovator to be in those spaces for too long. So that's one thing I did know.
Okay.
So when I was working at those jobs, it definitely was a
transition. You were like, this is just my pathway to get to where I want to be.
I used to sketch shoes at my desk and post them, and people knew.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where she wants to be.
Right. She's just visiting. She's not here permanently.
Not at all.
So talk to me a little bit about Gold the Label.
Okay.
Like how that all came to be. I mean, the logo is so unique to me. I'm like, is that a Chinese character? Or, how did all of that come to be?
So I've done coaching in the past, and I love telling the story about our logo, because for the first year we did not have one.
Okay.
And I stressed the importance of just doing the work behind what faces the world, because the work will speak for itself, right? And we, meaning me in the business, I couldn't afford it at that time.
Right.
I had just come home from school. I was quite young. I hadn't finished school yet, so I didn't have the credentials to even do the work that I wanted to be doing. But I had this business idea, and I had a customer base, and I couldn't afford it. So at the time, Bermuda Sun was still in operation.
Yes.
And I had a friend who was a graphic designer there, and I don't know why she didn't do it, but she recommended me to one of the graphic designers there. So he sent over some mocks, and I was like, I don't really like these. And I think timing didn't work. It's been some time, so I don't really remember what happened, but it didn't work out with him, so he passed it on to another
person.
Yes, another graphic designer. And at this point, I was like, you know what? I want this sorted out. I think I have enough change for this. And I went into the office. I sure did. That says a lot about me.
Right.
I've been that person. And I sat shout out to Jerry Soltis. Jerry was the graphic designer who created our logo. And I sat at his desk with him. If I close my eyes, I feel like I can still be there. And I was like, this is what I want. And it was very much a collaborative effort. Yeah. And I'll never forget, it cost me $400. Yep. And that's a lot of money now, but that was really a lot of money then.
Yes.
For someone who was just customizing shoes.
Yeah.
And it's just our, the letter. So at the time, it was the Gold label. Now it's Gold the label, and it's a G, the T, and the L. But what I love about it, and I think the part that is most notable, which helps with brand awareness, is the top portion. Yeah. Because I'm a Christian, and the top portion looks like a cross.
Okay.
Yeah, that lowercase T.
Yeah.
So the inspiration around it was the brush strokes to make it look like art.
Yes.
So it was kind of just marrying all the things that make me into my business.
Your label.
And I love it. It is the essence of you. Yeah. Right? Going back to what you said, like usually most times solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, their business and they are synonymous. Yeah, it's an extension of you. Yeah. Which is a good thing and a bad thing.
It can be, right?
It can very much be, because sometimes I'm the face of our brand, and this April 13th makes 14 years. I'm kind of like, okay, no. All right. You are it. And sometimes as the business grows, it has its own personality. Yes. It has its own identity. And it does things very differently from you and the other businesses that you're running. So, again...
Well, let's talk a little bit about that, being the face of the brand, because sometimes at some point, people are like, oh, no, I don't want anybody to know it's me. I want the brand to speak for itself. Like, how important is it for you specifically for Gold the Label that you were the face of the brand? And like you said, when you have these other business ventures, how do you marry that? Like, how do you navigate that?
So because it was something that I fell into, I never gave it much thought. Okay. So I used to sit at my desk when I was younger and really dream about all of the possibilities, right? So I like to say that I'm a dreamer, but more importantly, I'm a doer. So I did it, but all of the things that I wanted to happen have now happened, and I'm like, okay, I thought about it, but I didn't really think about it. So now, 14 years later, I am so embedded in this, and I actually have to remind people, like, we have customer service now. Like, you're not sending an email to me. Right. We have someone who assists with our social media. I'm not the only person that's checking these messages. Right. I don't even see the customer service emails. So it's so many things that now I personally have to train the public on about the evolution of the business as well. Right. But I didn't think about it, you know? And I think that comes into play where sometimes we have that little self-sabotage where I wanted all of the things, but then when all of the things happen, I'm like, oh, damn, damn, I didn't really think about all of these things
what
happening.
Does that mean now?
What does that even mean? So I love it. I love being able to touch our consumers locally. You know, it's a small community. But sometimes you're just not in the headspace for it either. You know, I'm buying milk, I'm buying eggs.
And
somebody
they run up to you in a girl wagon.
Yes. Or they have the product on, which I love. But then like you're buying your eggs. Like your head's not there. So it's staying on with that as well and understanding that you are the face of it.
Right.
And it just comes with the territory. But I did not plan that at all.
So do you think it's a good thing?
Yes, it can be. Everything in life is what you make it, right? So because I fell into it, it's kind of just a responsibility that comes with it. And I think in time, with marketing, that's what I studied in school. With marketing, you can position anything to be anything. So in time, if I want to step back, which I kind of have, there are lots of people who know about the brand who do not know about me, which I think is really great because that speaks to the work. So there are ways that you can do it. So it can be a good thing or a bad thing, honestly. It just depends on how you feel about it and then how you treat it as well. Yeah.
So thinking about Gold the label and what it's gonna be, what does that look like for you? So when you think about it in its most beautiful version of itself, what does that look like for you?
So it'll definitely be carried in high-end retailers. And questions like this always make me smile because we're always working on things. So there are a lot of things that I actually can't talk about. But I love that we are carried in 3 local retailers here.
Yes.
We have, I'm not sure of their inventory level, but our bags at one point were carried in Cassine. They might still have like 1 or 2 left. A select few of our sunglasses are actually in Tabs. On their Reed Street location. And then our hats, be it our bucket hats, trucker hats, and currently our beanies are at Lines Apparel, also on Reed Street. And I like that because the different products speak very heavily to the products that company sells.
Correct.
So it's kind of like a marriage of what they already have, so it doesn't really stand out. But we can then touch the customers who don't necessarily want to shop online.
Right.
And that's what we want globally as well. Because we do have a global customer base, but sometimes people do just want to go in and touch and feel, and we're based here, right? And a lot of people don't even know where Bermuda is. So
isn't that funny?
It's crazy still. So we get customers like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
So ideally, in the most glorious form would be to have our products in the retail locations that match the branding that we have.
Gotcha.
And in time, that will happen very soon, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
So how does being based in Bermuda influence your brand and the designs that you come up with?
Bermuda is such a beautiful place. It's almost like a creative's paradise. Within just how we look and how our hospitality is. You know, we're very big on good morning and thank you. And all of that politeness can inspire you if you let it. And of course, just the scenery and all of that. But I will say that I was more inspired living in a bigger city because I love to people watch, and you can't really do that
in Bermuda
because
be watching your cousins, be like, "Girl, this is the 4th time you done walk by."
Or you're just sitting in a space, and I am very guilty of this, where someone looks at you like, what are you looking at?
Yeah.
So it's different cultural dynamics, which I appreciate in both spaces, but I am definitely inspired by my life in Bermuda, as well as my proximity to my family.
Okay.
So our most popular and best-selling bucket bag is named after my grandmother, my living grandmother, and then our newest tote that was released has been named after my grandmother who is deceased. So having paying homage to the women in my family is really important. And being back home, because I lived in Toronto, I have an on-again relationship with Toronto, so spanning like 11 years.
Right.
But the most recent stint was about 5 years. And I think what I felt the most being there was the absence of my family. So being back home and having that time with them has definitely inspired my work as well, because there's nobody like Bermudian.
Yeah,
you know?
that is
your aunties
true.
And your like.
That's
there's just
very true.
nobody like that. I'm so inspired by the women in my family. So that's I know that's not specific to Bermuda, but that is something that has inspired me. So of course the colors and our culture, but definitely our my connection to my family. And one thing that I'm really proud of is our Ida bucket bags cut match collection. So those released last August, and they are in tribute to the holiday, and the colors are inspired by the Cut Match team. So we have Somerset Shortcake, which has a pink in it, so red, blue, and a pink, and then St. George's Sunrise, which has orange and then light blue and dark blue.
Nice.
And that was something that I was really proud of, especially our advertising for that. It, featured, of course, St. George's Cricket Club and then little cricket elements in there. But what was really special about it was the opening of the ad had a poem recited by Aisha Townsend.
Yes.
Which I love her. And that speaks to emancipation and in such a witty and clever way. If people don't know about Aisha, they should get informed because she's incredible. So that spoken word was at the beginning. And it's funny because that clip was just a video on her Instagram that Kristen White had filmed. So I love that it has all those layers of Bermudian
I love that too.
Women. I haven't really shared that story publicly, so I'm happy that I have this opportunity to share that. That's so Bermudian.
Yes, it very much
That's
is.
very Bermudian.
Yeah,
so having that as a body of work to display the bags, as that storytelling, I absolutely love that. So that was a tribute to Bermuda.
I love that. And I feel like that in itself is a way that you can differentiate what you're creating from all the other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like your bags are beautiful,
Thank
very
you.
high end. Like you said, it's something that I haven't seen here produced locally.
Thank you.
So, but then having that layer of the story and how you came to be and why you chose those colors, I think is not only appealing to Bermudians and local people who live on the island, but outside of Bermuda as well. So for those who don't know, you'd be like, well, now you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Storytelling is really a great vehicle to convey anything.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, I'm not doing anything groundbreaking. I'm designing sunglasses and handbags, and I'm aware of that, you know? And that's consumerism at best. We don't need any more stuff. But what's important to me is the messaging behind it. So, of course, I mentioned to you my faith that's embedded all throughout it. And then how can I tell the stories of the products and what inspired me to create these things to make it different, and that's what does it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think now as consumers, there's so much to choose from.
Yeah.
You're making a choice, right?
Exactly.
And the story can sometimes make the difference between choosing to purchase and not, right?
Exactly.
If it resonates with you, if there's something in it that you can identify with, then it makes a purchase, especially of a luxury item.
Yes, it's an investment.
It's an investment.
And with inflation, the prices will keep going up.
Yeah. Yep.
And I want to make it worthwhile.
Right.
So when people purchase it, they of course are aware that they're purchasing from a Black woman and a Black team. My team is made up of all Black women, and I love that. So they know that you're buying into something else. And people who value creativity, which I think a large part of our audience does, they feel connected to what they see, and that's really important because, as you mentioned, there's just so much of everything now. So I always want us to have a different kind of reach.
Yeah.
And I think we do okay with that. I think we do an okay job with that.
I think you are too.
Thank you.
So in terms of how you deliver your business model and how you get your product out there, let's talk a little bit about that. Was it always your intent to be online? And
yes.
Okay, talk a little bit about that journey.
So again, I fell into it. So back in 2010, there was no Shopify and none of these things existed. So I remember signing up for Big Cartel. And that was $10 a month. And I was like, okay, I need to be able to sustain this. What am I doing? And then there was all of the, banking wasn't evolved then. So I was like, how am I going to collect payments? But I always wanted that.
Okay.
Because my business technically was founded in Toronto while I was in school. So I always had a global mindset about shipping outside of the quote unquote four walls of Bermuda.
Right.
Always. So online was always the option. And I always wanted, especially it's reflected in our logo, I always wanted there to be an art element to it. Not overtly where it's just paint or what people naturally think when it comes to art. But I always wanted that storytelling element to be there, because that's a part of our model and how we reach our customers.
Right.
So in order to do that, you need to have visuals that reach the people beyond saying, buy this.
Right.
So that structure was always there.
Okay. I think it lends itself quite nicely to satisfying that global clientele, right? And when we speak to entrepreneurs that are thinking about starting their business, we're always like, okay, Bermuda we only have so many people.
Yeah, you can plateau.
So what is the next thing? Like, how do you reach the public outside of Bermuda?
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about your fulfillment.
Okay.
Because that can be a bit of a challenge, right, for some people, because we know it costs a lot of money to get stuff into Bermuda and to get it out. So how do you navigate that process? Because you do have a global clientele.
Yeah. So we're still navigating that. I have a very, like many entrepreneurs here, I have a very huge discrepancy with how government helps small businesses. And I don't feel like I'm speaking out of turn because, like I said, I am one of many. There is not much help. I'm so grateful that there are entities like the BEDC and Ignite that help to give people tools. But at the end of the day, it's really a numbers game.
Yes.
It's dollars and cents. And even on a local front, like we used to ship all of our local orders through DHL, but because of inflation, that's now up to $15, and you're going up the street.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we have a logistics person in-house now, and she helps other local businesses as well. So it's great. So we get to share her.
Right,
and she's phenomenal at that. But some people who are standing customers were like, well, what happened to DHL?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, well, do you want to pay $15 per package?
Right.
Right. And for a year, we were actually absorbing that cost because I couldn't make that decision to charge people. We're already charging them 12.
Yeah.
And at one point it was 10, 11.
Right.
So that just on a local front is difficult. But then if we're talking about bringing things in and then the system with customs and all of the things like custom bears, they bear a lot of that brunt. But it's not always them. It's just the system at large.
Right.
And then the agreements that we have with these external shipping agents to ship directly to Bermuda is so much money. And because we have ties to Toronto, I see what the prices are to ship from our manufacturers in Asia to Toronto. Sometimes it's half the cost and it's going further.
Right.
So for me, that's a larger conversation about what have we negotiated with these shipping agents, because they're located here. They're international companies that are now on our shores. We should have some sort of say on the terms for business, because it's like, it's crazy, right?
It is crazy.
And we just shipped to Dubai the other day. Like, we have customers everywhere.
Right.
But sometimes I'm like, should we move back to Toronto?
Right. Because of that cost.
And and I'm not saying we're directly impacting our economy so greatly, but we are circulating some dollars here.
You are.
And I think it's just a larger conversation, and I can honestly say that so many entrepreneurs are tired of having the conversation because you'll have the chat, and I personally haven't had them, but I know people who have.
Right.
Because for other endeavors, I've reached out for creative projects and have been met with nothing, so I decided I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
But I have seen the travailing with other small businesses, and it's met with nothing.
Right.
And they feel the same way. So goodness, I'm forgetting the question.
No, but I think what's apparent is that indeed is a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's one that we see.
Yeah.
We speak with other people who have products that they want to sell outside of Bermuda, and the cost can be prohibitive.
It's exorbitant. And so that's the question, the fulfillment. So we fulfill everything on island right now. But to get the goods here, as I mentioned, it's a hefty price tag.
Right,
I remember once, we actually didn't go through with this, but I was quoted $20,000 to bring in 100 units.
Now
that financially just is the dumb. I said, well, you could keep it forever.
Right.
Because we're never going to give you that. But just give me the quote to send it to Toronto just so I can see. It was almost half that.
Yeah.
So that then speaks to something with our jurisdictions.
Yeah.
I don't know what the exact terminology is, but what I know is something in that water ain't right.
So that's a challenge that needs to be addressed. And
I don't even know which entity sorts it out. All I know is it needs to be sorted out quickly, because here's the thing about millennials and younger. The capacity for foolishness is very small, and you see how they don't stay in jobs very long, and entrepreneurship is on the rise. They will get up and leave this country and never come back. So those dollars will circulate in another community.
Right.
And with the help of social media and just we're so wealthy in creativity here. With the way that people are evolving in expressing themselves, they will thrive outside of Bermuda and never never come back.
You hear what it is?
So
she said
you
we
know
have
what?
to fix it.
We have to fix
We
it
do,
because
we do. I agree.
know we put so much emphasis on international business, but the world is changing so much.
It is.
And the future generations do not have the same bandwidth as the people who stay in a job for 50 years.
That's true.
And they want to be their own bosses. So we have to incentivize that somehow.
I agree with you 100%. Like, we see it all the time. You
Yeah.
know, part of what we do here is we speak with people who are interested in starting businesses. We like to help them start their business.
Which is awesome.
And then sometimes you're met with the red tape and bureaucracy, and you're just like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, we want to see the entrepreneurial ecosystem grow.
Yeah.
But we can't be dream killers, right?
Exactly. And it's a space that can actually lend to tourism as well.
Of course it
can.
can.
If I'm creating products that are inspired by Cut Match and I'm telling the story of what that is through our advertising,
people want to come and see.
They want to come and see.
They want to come
so
and see.
So now you can partner with, as the government, you can partner with smaller businesses to then help fund these creative endeavors that will ultimately impact your product, which is the country, right? There's so many things, but
you know what I want to say? I'm glad you are here, though, because part of we do suffer from that. I call it brain drain or creative drain, whatever you want to call it, because you have people, you have all these great ideas, and then you're met with all of this red tape, and you're like, well, guess what? I don't have to be here. I can go back to where I come from. So having you here, we understand that there is a bit of a sacrifice.
Yeah.
And the hope is that if there are enough of you who are willing to, break the system or break down those barriers, that it will change for the good and it will change for the next generation of entrepreneurs. But I get it. You're like, you got about this much more patience left.
5 seconds. And we already have ties to Canada anyway.
Exactly.
So that has been a blessing for me. And like I said in the beginning, I see how it was ordained. Like everything kind of just matches up. So I do have an out if I want it, but not everyone here has that.
That is very true.
And that's unfortunate because I know, like in Canada, we have an account with Canada Post, which is just like their general post mailing service. And it's incentivized. So having an account with them, we get next day delivery, we get a discount on it, and the people are nicer.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we need etiquette courses, but customer service representatives in Bermuda are not very nice.
Right.
So you're just trying to make your pennies, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're spending money anyway, then you're met with disgruntled people.
Yeah.
So it just makes the whole experience very trash.
Yeah.
But it just comes with it, and people move around it, but you shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to.
Yeah,
I get it. I want to touch on one of the things that you mentioned before about collaboration.
Okay.
Right? Because I think there are, like you said, a lot of young people with these great ideas, some great creatives. They have products and or services.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, what do you think? What are your thoughts on collaboration versus competition, especially in the fashion industry?
Yeah. So competition I believe competition in a negative way will always expose insecurities.
Okay.
Right? However, I'm a competitive person by nature. Like, I used to love sports and different things when I was younger. So I feel like that's why I said negative. Healthy competition allows for more things to, more entities to exist in a space, and that can also help with price. So like when you walk down the aisle in the grocery store, there's not one brand of bread. Right. But if there was, that one brand of bread would be very expensive.
Yes,
right?
correct.
So I love that. You know what I mean? And plus, I think sometimes someone else doing something drives you as well to differentiate yourself, to tell your story, but also to be like, well, look what we're doing. They're doing that, but look what we're doing. So I think it's healthy, but I feel like it shouldn't be the focus, right? Because it does stifle people, and collaboration is always better than competition, because as I mentioned about working for other people, it's the same thing when you collaborate. You don't know everything, and different people have different proficiencies that they bring to a space. And if you're collaborating for a product that you're creating, it makes your product better.
Right.
That's good business.
Yes.
If you're looking to differentiate and make something better, why wouldn't you bring on the people to make that better?
Right.
And we've, discernment with everything, but we've collaborated with other creatives, and it's been great. When we first released our Ida bucket bags, I was calling them the brunch bags because they were mini. We have larger sizes now, but the mini bags were the first ones. And we had press-on nails that were created by Shakira Brangman of Coat Nails to match the colorways of the brunch bags. Yeah. So that was really fun. They sold out right away because now you're getting cross-promotion and another creative gets to add their creativity to your product. That's right. And it was really fun. With the cup match bags I mentioned, we collaborated with Callan Crockwell of Couture Crochet, and she created these beautiful knitted bucket hats to match the colorways in the bag. So where it makes sense, do it. You know what I mean? Especially if you are an established brand that can give another creative a platform.
Right.
I mean, you don't need it. People can do well on their own, but if it's a way where you can give someone a platform to display their work in a way that maybe they wouldn't have, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you do it? So when it makes sense and with discernment, but collaboration over competition any day.
I love that. And I think it's important to say, especially in Bermuda, because it's so small, and sometimes you can find yourself being like, well, this is mine. I don't want, you know, because somebody's going to steal it or there's not enough people. People do.
And people do. That's why I said everything with discernment. Yeah. I'm the contract queen.
Right.
So if I'm collaborating, I show up, we have NDAs, because if you're being, you know, you might be privy to products that are in our pipeline or whatever. So here's where you're going to sign. Yeah. And a lot of people don't do that.
That is true.
And so, but there's no language around that. I feel like running a business or entrepreneurship classes should be in our schools because there's so many things that I did not know. Right. And I'm excited to share with you what we have coming to help people with that. But contracts for collaboration are essential because people do steal.
They do.
And you need to have that kind of business knack to know who to trust and who not to trust based off of the things that they're telling you from the first conversation. So there's that too.
I think it's important to recognize that people do steal.
They do.
But I don't think that should be the reason why you don't collaborate. No, and I think sometimes that's what happens, right? People are like, oh, well, so-and-so's idea got so I'm just going to keep it. And I don't think that there is room for growth when you do that.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And I think the grocery store analogy is such a great one because people feel like, well, if someone else is doing it, then I can.
Right.
But some days I don't want, I don't know, what's different brands? Some days I don't want
the honey wheat or whatever from Sara Lee. You want Crolane rolls, right?
Right? And or wherever I'm headed to, typically I get this, and if I wasn't going here, I would get this, but I'm going here, so this now requires this. So all of that to say, like, other people doing things should never stop you, and that's why I made the mention of it. Competition highlights insecurities. Yes. You know, and I think that that's good if you take note that it's magnifying an insecurity in you, because then you can work around it.
Exactly. Or fix it.
Exactly. Because there is absolutely no room for emotion in business. None.
Ooh, girl, and people... You schooling people.
People who lead with emotions in business, they end up with the shorter end of the stick every time.
I would agree. I agree.
But I had to learn that the hard way, and you miss out on opportunities because you're in your feelings, and there is no room for that.
So talk a bit, because believe it or not, it's like we're down to but I want you to talk a little bit about what you're talking about. This upcoming project.
So the Unemployed Entrepreneur, it actually releases today, February 22nd. We're having a free webinar, so this I think will air after that. But people can inquire. So it's the Unemployed Entrepreneur. It is a space dedicated, so it'll have digital products, but it's a space dedicated to inspiring up-and-coming entrepreneurs. I call them the new school of bosses, as well as to educate them on embracing the unconventionalness of entrepreneurship. It's been a few years in the making. I'm pretty busy, so I haven't really had the time to dedicate to creating the space the way I wanted to. But in 14 years of running a business without any, formal...
You just had to learn on the...
And I really want to help people navigate those pitfalls or, to identify different things that could potentially be mistakes for them ahead of the game. And just to give them the game, really, on how you reach the audience. We are shipping all over the world. There is a science to that. There's so many things that come into play that I think our counterparts outside of Bermuda have a lead in just because they are outside of Bermuda. I think here, we only think about here, as you mentioned earlier. So the course is, of course, or the digital products are available to everyone.
Everybody.
But my focus is Bermudians, just because I wish I had it. I wish I had a me.
Right.
And I wish that I had people that were willing to give me help without wanting anything in return. And I think I'm in a position to do that for people now, where it's just like, here's the help. You have to pay for it, but here's the help. But it's an investment.
Yeah.
And we invest in plane tickets and new shoes and new bags, all of that. So this will be an investment, and you are paying me for my experience.
Right.
All of the mistakes that I took on for you, you get to pay for that without having to.
So you don't have to make them.
Right. So I wish I had that,
is
what I'm saying, with someone who looks like me, and it's not someone who was just creating these, what are they called? The done-for-you packages, where someone bought the package from someone and now they're selling it, but they actually haven't sold anything themselves, have lived it. And
all your experiences
all of
and
that
your
is
journey.
In there. All of those, anecdotes and all of that are all in there to help you make some money.
So if people are interested and they want to be part of it, what should they do?
So the best thing right now, because we're kind of beta, follow us on the Unemployed Entrepreneur on Instagram, or send us a message. The page is private because that is a part of the subscription.
Okay.
Yes, because nothing with it is free.
She said contracts, y'all don't.
Come on now. And you can get a link to the rest of the information, and then should you decide to purchase, then you got all of the perks.
All right.
There's tiers to it, though.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I think information is power.
It is.
Education is power.
It is.
And I think sometimes people get paralyzed by planning as opposed to doing, and so
analysis
paralysis. So I think it sounds like what you have created is going to assist that next entrepreneur say, okay, these are the things to avoid, right? And this is like a clear pathway where you can actually get your idea off the ground.
As well as that part.
Yeah.
Your idea off the ground. People skip so many entry-level steps, and it's a lot of work that they don't want to do, like the microwave generation, where they just want it fast.
Yep.
We had our groundbreaking year in 2020, which seemingly was like the worst year for business.
Yeah.
But that was 10 years into business.
Wow.
And overnight success takes 10 years, so they say.
Wow.
And the first 5 years of business, people don't typically see profit. So people don't understand that part of it.
No, they want it instant.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to give them the tools to hopefully expedite that process just by way of avoiding certain things and doing the right things to get you to where you expect to be just a little bit quicker.
I love it. Well, Perri, listen, thank you so much for coming on Mind Your Business.
Thank you for having me.
I'm wishing you success, strength to strength. I can already see it.
I receive it.
And please do come back and keep us updated on how this new venture is going.
Of course. I would love to partner with you guys if we can.
Yes, girl.
Yes, let's do that.
You ain't said nothing but a word.
Come
Listen,
on now.
We're all about partnering, especially when it comes to helping other entrepreneurs, realize their dreams.
So at Gold the Label on all social media platforms, www.goldthelabel.com. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look for you. And again, just want to thank you for coming out and joining us.
Thank you for having
me. You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Mind Your Business with me, your host, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. because if you don't mind your business, who will? Mind Your Business is brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda Business starts here.